Hello, everyone. My name's Mary Grace, and I'm sorry I couldn't be with you tonight. I'm actually in Illinois, so I wanted to show you a little bit of what we're experiencing out here. It's probably less than 20 degrees outside or so, and for the past week we've been in the negatives. So you're pretty lucky where you are right now. All right, so I was asked to make a little video, and again, my name is Mary Grace. I'm a consecrated lay woman in the family of the Apostles of the Interior Life. And a lot of people don't really, know what that means necessarily, but there's a lot of ways to be consecrated to God, and being a consecrated lay woman is one of them. And what basically this means is that I've taken vows of poverty, chastity, obedience, and I'm a spouse of Christ. so so I have a community, but I don't actually live in community. Though I suppose you could if you wanted to. There's just a couple of us, and we live in different states, so it's not really possible. But I actually live and work in the world, and I have a normal, non-religious job. So a little bit about my vocation story. I didn't grow up thinking that I was going to become a religious, and in truth, I was, I'm a cradle Catholic, but I didn't necessarily, have a strong prayer life growing up. I prayed with family, but that was pretty much it, and also, praying to pass tests, things like that. But when I was in college, the campus church was in between my dorm and my classes, so it would stop in occasionally, and from then on, I learned how to do mental prayer, and I learned how to pray, and I started thinking about God's will. And my spiritual director had asked me to discern about my vocation. I learned that the word vocation comes from vocale, which means calling, and when God has a call for all of us. And are we called to marriage, or are we called to be marriage, to be in a marriage that's to God and the church, and in truth, I didn't really think I needed to discern something like that initially, because I always thought I was going to get married. But when I was probably when I was about 50, I was going to get married. But I had actually wanted to do something for God first, and that's why. But that's another story. But so for sure, married people do a lot for God. So it's not either or on whether that you have to do one or the other in order to serve God. Both can serve God. But anyways, I decided to start discerning, and started asking God on my prayers about what His will was. And I was pretty sure that I didn't want to become a nun, though I've always had a fondness towards them, actually. But I did actually go to the ceremony of a man who became a consecrated lay man, so I knew that was possible. And around that time, I also started to think about how sad it made me when people were not going to Mass, and that they didn't know who God was or have a relationship with Him. And it also made me sad too, because at that time I was starting to become, or I started to think that God was becoming a close friend to me, and I really loved the Lord, and I felt His love, and I realized that God loves everyone really, but they just they just didn't know it. And so I remember asking God, well, who's there to help these people, Lord? And and somewhere in deep in my heart, I felt like He had answered, well, how about you? And from then on, I pretty much tried to ignore this question because I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know what it was, what I was being invited to, and kept praying, of course. But I really didn't like the question, because I thought, well, what does this mean for me? And I don't think I really wanted to think about that. But anyways, I did have a discernment period, and it was pretty much all throughout college, and I actually had a great time in college, and I was doing fine in school. I was involved in a lot of activities. I was in a sorority. I had a lot of friends, and I was close to my family. And I actually felt like the world was my oyster. And I know that sounds like super corny, but I was doing pretty well. But I started to realize that the greatest thing in my life was really the Lord, and that really Jesus was enough for me. And I had fallen in love with the Lord, and I initially, when I was thinking about the consecrated life, the consecrated lay life, I was, intellectually it made sense to me, because I thought, it's, if I wanted to do something for the Lord, and wanted to be, completely devoted to doing things that He wanted me to do, it'd be easier to do if I wasn't married or had kids, because for sure they would be my first priority if I did choose that. But I actually only decided to become consecrated when the idea of being consecrated met my heart, and so it was really when my heart and my mind met that I decided that I wanted to be a consecrated lay woman. So I took my vows unofficially at first, because I had to find a community to take my vows with, I wanted to find a community that where I shared in the same charism or heart, if you want, of the movement. So eventually took my vows 11 years later, though I had been living as an unofficial consecrated lay woman for that time, but I hadn't been able to find my community before that time. So, during this time, before and after, now that I'm a officially consecrated lay person, I've actually been pretty happy. I'm married to Jesus, and so I can tell you that He's a good spouse and He takes good care of me. And for sure, just like everyone else, I have ups and downs, but He's always been there to help me through any difficulties that I'm having in my life. And I've learned a whole new meaning of what divine providence means too, and what God's love for me means for me too. So really, what happens in my life? Well, I have a work life and I have a prayer life, and I try and fuse these together, and so that my work is a prayer too. So for my prayer life, I go to Mass daily. I do the Liturgy of the Hours. I do mental prayer or meditation, and I have a holy hour. I do a rosary. I go to confession weekly. I try and incorporate some of these prayers into my day during the work day if I'm able to. If not, then it's before or after work. And I'm also a spiritual mentor, so I mentor my mentees in their prayer life, and I walk with them on their journey to God. And outside of that, I make friends and try to develop relationships with people. And if they're open, we talk about God, and if not, then we just become good friends. And so part of my apostle is going out and trying to reach lay people who may not want to go to church, or maybe they don't have anyone to talk to about God, or maybe they have some beef with them for whatever reason, and they don't try and seek out anyone to talk to their about their faith with. So throughout all of this, I can say that I've been very blessed, and I've never regretted making this decision at all. And the blessings have just they've actually overflowed. And I can always say that I always say that God will never be outdone in His generosity. And if you give your life to Him as a religious person or as a lay person in the world, He will bless your life. And my personal relationship with Him has increased, as has my faith and my trust in Him, and He's given meaning to the work that I do as a profession, and also in my life in general, and as a spiritual mentor, or even as a friend, or as a sister, or a daughter, or a niece. I see His hand in these places too. So, if you let Him, the Lord will use you to do His will. And so God bless you in your discernment. And even if you don't think that you have any sort of calling, I think it's important to ask the question, Lord, do you want me to be married to someone else, or do you want me for you? Do you want me for the church? Is Jesus enough for me? Is it that's a really good question, actually. And if the answer is no, then that's okay, because marriage is awesome, and it's holy. And if the answer is yes, then maybe you have a invitation to be married in another way. And so either way, if you find God's will for you and you do it, you're going to be happy. So God bless in your discernment process, and take care.